Good day everyone, my name is Hedrick H. Pila from BSc 1-5. Today, I discuss about phrenology and nature theory. So let's start. Phrenology, the study of the conformation of the skull as indicative of mental faculties and traits of character, especially according to the hypothesis of Franz Joseph Gall, a German doctor and such 19th century adherents as Johann Caspar, Spurzheim, and George Comte. So this is some of the proponents who find out the concept of phrenology. Later we will talk about their respective contribution to concept of phrenology. Phrenology, from the Greek word phren meaning mind and logos meaning knowledge, is based on their belief that human behavior originated in the brain. Next is pseudoscience. Pseudoscience, which involves the measurement of bumps on the skull to predict mental traits. So pseudoscience is also involves beliefs, theories, or practices that have been or are seen to be scientific but do not have a scientific basis. Next is Franz Joseph Gall. So who is Franz Joseph Gall? Franz Joseph Gall was a German neuroanatomist, physiologist, and pioneer in the study of the localization of mental function in the brain. According to Gall, a person's strengths, weakness, morals, proclivities, character, and personality could be determined by physical characteristic of his or her skull. Gall also mapped out the location of 27 brain organs on the human skull. Several areas of Gall's map of the skull were believed to correspond to the person's tendency to engage in criminal or deviant acts. Gall believes that one area corresponds to the tendency to commit murder, another area corresponds to tendency to steal. Gall's effort in phrenology becomes a significant impact to identify the brain as the origin of the behavior. Next is basic tenets of Franz Joseph Gall system. Franz Gall is basically the pioneer of this study called basic tenets of Franz Joseph Gall system nga. Pioneer means siya yung nauna sa study na to. So according to him, the brain is the organ of the mind. So it means whatever will it comes in our mind, whatever thinking we have, it all comes from our brain. Hindi naman ito nanggagaling sa puso natin or anong parte ng katawan natin, kundi sa pangunahing utak lamang natin. Next is the mind is composed of multiple distinct innate faculties. So it means our brain has many differences or multiple distinct, meaning it has a different aspects or natural characteristic or faculties, in short, the ability of our thinking. 3. Because they are distinct, each faculty must have a separate seat or organ in the brain. So since they are different, our thinking is not mixed. There is really a place where our mindset or thinking works. Halimbawa na lang yung mga mindset natin sa buhay or yung mga moral mindset natin, may kanya-kanyang part daw sila sa utak natin kung saan ito nagpo-function. 4. The size of an organ, other things being equal, is a measure of its power. So, meaning nito is whether our organ is large or small, it has correlative to our character or intellect. Halimbawa na lang sa atin, kadalasan kapag nakita tayo ng malaki noo, isipin agad natin matalino kasi nga malaki yung organ nila or yung brain nila, something like that. 5. The shape of the brain is determined by the development of the various organ. So meaning kung ano yung shape ng utak natin is basically how our various organ or brain can be developed. 6. As the skull takes its shape from the brain, the surface of the skull can be read as an accurate index of psychological aptitudes and tendency. So, sabi dito, the surface of the skull can be read as an accurate index of psychological aptitudes and tendency. Halimbawa, when a person is bald, we can immediately see the bumps on his head. So, we can determine how big the portion of the human brain is. So, that's the idea of Franz Gall system of phrenology. Next is Johann Spurzheim. So, who is Johann Spurzheim? Johann Spurzheim was a German physician and prominent contributor to phrenology, a field of neuroscience focused on studying the shapes of the skulls in relation to the activity levels, and certain functional areas of the brain. So, John also expanded the map of the brain organs, developed a hierarchical system of the organs, and created a model phrenology bust that depicted the location of the brain organs. Next is George Combe. George Combe worked briefly as a lawyer and a brewer before devoting his career to the promotion of phrenology, a pseudoscience which explored the relation between the shape of someone's skull and their personality, intelligence, and economic prospects. So, Combe was probably the most influential study on the phrenology in the 19th century. It featured Combe's visions of universal human growth through the inheritance of acquired mental qualities as well as explanation of the phrenological theory of mind. Next is Gall developed the theory of organology and method of cranioscopy that will be later be known as phrenology. So, ano nga ba ang cranioscopy? Cranioscopy is a method to determine the personality and development of mental and moral faculties on the basis of the external shape of the skull. So, cranioscopy is the term created by Franz Gall and later known as a phrenology. Assert that the shapes of a person's skulls revealed his or her intellectual and emotional characteristic. Also, it is basis of phrenology but was later proved to be unscientific. Gals and Spurzheim become a partner. They worked together for years to develop theories about brain localization and function. So, because of the collaboration of Gall and Johann, Gall led him to the development of his theories. He believed that behavior was organized hierarchically in the nervous system, that the brain was the organ of mental function, that moral and intellectual capacity were innate, and that all emotions and mental faculties are localized in different parts of the brain. Next is nature theory. So, what is nature theory? Nature theory asserts that the etiology of criminal behavior is biologically based in genetic inheritance, the structure and function of people's brains, and other psychological responses. So, according to the nature theories, our behavior is same with the genetical theories. In other words, nature theories is also part of our biological theories of crime causation that relates to the criminality or criminal behavior. So there are differences between nature theory and nurture theory. So, nature theory, intelligence is largely determined genetically and that low intelligence is linked to criminal behavior. So, sinasabi dito na sa nature theory na ang talino o galing daw natin ay practically inherited or minana natin. At sinasabi din dito na ang tao namang mababa ang IQ level ay posibleng mataas ang chance na mag-commit ng crime. While nurture theory, intelligence is not inherited but is largely product of environment. Low IQ scores do not cause crime but may result from the same environmental factors. So, dito naman sa nurture theory, sinasabi dito na ang intelligence daw ay hindi inherited o hindi namamana. Tinutukoy din dito na ang proponents daw ng nurture theory is focusing on their relating criminality with other environmental factors, and also they believe that the low IQ is greatly influencing factors to criminal behavior. So, next is psychometry. Psychometry, the field that seeks to measure psychological and mental differences between criminal and non-criminals. So, psychometry before is called pseudoscience because psychometry is the kind of parapsychology. It means is the kind of practice before that when a person touches the object, he will have the spiritual discernment about the history of the object. But for now, we're talking about psychometry. We're referring now to the field that seek to measuring the intelligence of a person. It is determining the capabilities or abilities of the person by examining through the process of psychometry. So, psychometric tests includes measuring range of skills from cognitive abilities, and knowledge to assess one's personality, and the tests are an object way to measure the potential ability of candidates to perform well in a job role. So, through the using of psychometric tests, person can easily determine their abilities and knowledge. For example, if a person got an high scores, it could be a possible and excellent indication of the high performance on a job. The school psychometry attempts to explain the correlation of intelligence and crime. So, yun nga, yan. Next is the proponents of nature theory. So, sino-sino nga ba yung mga proponents nito? So, first is holds that low intelligence is genetically determined and inherited. This was supported by Henry Goddard in his studies in 1920 that many institutionalists were what he considered feeble-minded and concluded that at least half of all juvenile delinquents were mentally defected. So, Henry Goddard is actually focusing much on the superiority of intelligence of an individual. Henry also said that in order to reduce crime, people need to be smart because he believes that the root of criminality is those who have the low comprehension or low IQ. Next is in similar, Wayne William Haley and Augusta Brunner tested a group of delinquents in Chicago. In Boston, they found 37% were subnormal in intelligence. Brunner and Haley concluded that delinquent boys were 5 to 10 times more likely to be mentally deficient than delinquent boys. Thus, many criminologists agreed with the predisposition of substandard individuals toward delinquency. So, ayun nga. So, yung mga ibang proponents ng nature theory, sinasabi nila na that people with low IQ levels are actually the ones with the highest tendency to commit crime. Next is intelligence and crime. So, while it acknowledged that the range of personal and environmental factors are likely to influence offending behavior, gender, age, peer support, puberty, education, ethnicity, low impulse control, empathy, psychological well-being, personality, etc., link between low levels or IQ and criminal involvement continues to receive considerable attention. So, it says here that many factors can possibly affect a person's criminality as in the example I mentioned. But it also says here that factors that contribute low IQ to criminality is still greater. Dr. Henry Goddard, after his long study of the feeble-mindedness, reached the conclusion that every mentally deficient individual is a potential criminal and further. 40% of families manifesting feeble-mindedness show criminality and that sex delinquency in such families is the practically rule. So, dito sinasabi naman ni Dr. Henry Goddard na ang tao na may low IQ level ay ang mga taong mataas ang chance na mag-commit ng crime. Kaya dapat hindi sila dinadala sa mga lugar na mataas ang criminality rate dahil sila ay mga potential criminal. Next is in their influential book Crime and Human Nature, James Q. Wilson and Richard Hermstein conclude that the IQ crime link is indirect. Low intelligence leads to the poor school performance, which enhance the chance of criminality. So on their books called Crime and Human Nature, they say here that there is nothing directly that when your intelligence is low, you are a criminal, but there is a relationship that low intelligence leads to poor school performance that is possible to lead to a criminal behavior. Travis Hershey and Michaela Handelang published in 1997 an article linking intelligence and crime. They proposed the idea that low IQ increases the likelihood of criminal behavior through its effects on school performance. That is, youth with low IQs do poorly in school, and school failure and academic incompetence are highly related to delinquency and later to adult criminality. So dito naman sinasabi na there is a link that when a person has low school performance, eventually that person leads to delinquent act, and later on become adult, it will develop to criminal behavior. So that's all today. I hope you learn a lot about phrenology and nature theory. Thank you guys and have a good day.